Hello, this is Konstantinos Papageorgiou, Konstantin Papageorge, and we'll be summing up and maybe expanding a bit on biomechanics and stuff. So the principles are force motion principle, force time principle, and so on. We will see them one by one. The force motion principle is the first one. Here we have a free body diagram. It says that the force applied on a body will create or modify movement. This is more or less obvious, but sometimes implications of obvious things are not obvious. The force motion principle also states that no creation or modification of movement may be explained without the application of force. Forces must first act before any changes in motion can occur. Therefore, no magic changes in motion. This diagram is very interesting because it shows the insertion point of the tendon to the bone, and okay, as you know, naturally we have a biomechanical disadvantage because of the way our levers are created. So, for example, we have approximately to apply about 10 times more force than the weight we have to lift. Okay, this is one more reason we have to stick to biomechanical principles and see how we can bypass this obstacle or use our body in the best possible way. Force time principle is another principle which speaks about the length of time a force is applied, and this may be expressed by the concept of impulse, which is force times period of time. This has important implications for injury as well, because sometimes injury is created not because of stronger or greater forces, but because we have the same or less forces but applied in really brief periods of time. And this is something we also try to do in some sports like martial arts, okay, where we try to apply the same force that we can produce. We have limits in our body, so we try to apply the same force in the smallest period of time. Inertia, okay, which is of course the tendency of things, of bodies to retain, to not lose, to keep, that's the correct word, to keep their state, their moving state. If inertia did not exist, there would be no lag between force application and movement, no acceleration. Okay, so we wouldn't have to accelerate things, they would accelerate instantly. And things like concepts like the special weight that a pianist feels when playing the piano, or the swing weight of a tennis racket or a well balanced racket, are all related to inertia. Range of motion and posture. Posture is the way we keep ourselves, our bodies, in the form we would like to, the way we use our muscles, for example, and we support our body. Range of motion is usually connected with flexibility, but flexibility is just one case of the study of range of motion. Range of motion is also related to speed, muscle hypertrophy, and technical form. Muscle hypertrophy because the longer the muscle is and the bigger the range of motion of a joint, the more a muscle can hypertrophize. And the technical form, we see an example here. Of course, that technical form is irrelevant with tennis as well. So the athlete here is able to keep his center of gravity not moving up and down because he has a very good range of motion in his thighs and his legs. Balance, which is the ability of a person to control their body position relative to a base of support. And the classic distinction is between dynamic balance, where the center of gravity is outside the center of support, and static balance, where the center of gravity is inside the center of support. This is a classic way to define balance. I have proposed that we have to take into consideration control, uh, the feeling of control when referring to balance. Because, for example, sometimes our base or our center of gravity is inside our base of support, but we're not in balance because we're falling, we have momentum. But this is a classic way biomechanics define balance, and we should have this as a baseline. Kinetic chain principle is the most important principle for us. It's like we sum up all the previous principles. It talks about the energy that may be transferred through the links, joints between adjacent body segments. And this solves many problems. For example, how can we accelerate a very weak body segment, such as the arm is, that has to accelerate the tennis racket and the ball, the system, lower arm, tennis racket and tennis ball. Sometimes it's really heavy, because don't forget that the ball is coming with a very big momentum. Okay, and the way to do it is use the lower very strong parts and transfer this kinetic energy up to where we want it to be transferred. Okay, the kinetic chain diagrams always are with velocity or speed. Velocity is the vector of speed, is speed plus directionality and time. And here is a serial kinetic chain where each next body segment starts its active acceleration phase as soon as the previous one has almost its maximum speed, or zero acceleration when the tangent is approximately of the speed is 45 degrees. Okay, there the acceleration the acceleration is zero because the speed is declining, so we have deceleration. Okay, so here is zero acceleration, and this is an idealized, let's say, kinetic chain, and this is a more real one. It's by recording a tennis player and using real kinematic data, real recordings. And here I have a one unit kinetic chain where all the segments attain their top speed at the same time. This red here diagram is a serial kinetic chain. This is a unity kinetic chain, and this one is a unit kinetic chain. The difference is that here all the different segments start their movement at the same time. Here they're not, but in both cases the maximum speed is attained at the same time. And this is a kinetic chain of pitch Sampras. You may wonder where I found this. I actually found it in the Goethe Universität in Germany, in Frankfurt, in the library, and it was in German. I translated it. So you can see how rapid the acceleration of the racket is, and usually we as trainers think that the arm has magic properties, and we shout to the athletes, move your arm faster, but that's not the case. We can't create power this way. We must use the previous segments and have a very good kinetic chain, not just a fast swinging arm. You can't really have that. That's not effective. And what I have done is, in a publication of mine, I have taken from contact until release, that's some milliseconds, that's somewhere here, a very tiny area, and I have analyzed this period because this period is very important if we want to understand the whole movement, the previous movement, and maybe the next parts of the movement. So what I have proposed is the critical force maximization concept, where S, that's the velocity or speed, okay, is as close to this star as it can get, and this um, reveals optimum biomechanics, uh, because it is like hitting a ball without inertia. Okay, so the sooner the acceleration phase ends, because when the instance we get in touch with the tennis ball, after some milliseconds there is acceleration, because our force is much bigger than the counter force of the ball. But as we begin squeezing the ball, then of course we enter the deceleration phase. Okay, and what I'm trying to do is to keep my racket accelerating through the contact point. Okay, but not after the release. So it should keep accelerating throughout the whole contact period, but not after the release. Whip effect is very relevant to the kinetic chain. It's the last. It's whip effect refers to the behavior of the last segment when it's really fast and it has very effectively received all the energy from the previous segments. And I explain it with the pendulum example. Okay, we have a weight that's like our hand holding the racket, hitting the ball, and I shift the pivot point towards the weight. Okay, of course this thread is weightless. Our hand, our arm has weight, but that's just an idealization. Okay, and when I stop it, okay, because the kinetic chain model says that we should stop the previous segment before the next one begins its active acceleration. Then a D'Alembert force, an imaginary force, acts on the weight and it accelerates even for some instances, but this is very important if we want to accelerate throughout the contact phase. So actually this shift of the pivot point in the last segment happens on the ball, and it's another very important transitional point, and transition points are very important for our model in general, not only the biomechanical model. We will see transition points that are inside skills or in sequences. We will base our learning on on practicing in a very specific ways these transition points. Ergonomy is one more principle from ergo, ergon, and economy, economia, which means work and economy. Okay, and it's the applied science of equipment design intended to maximize productivity by reducing the performance fatigue and discomfort, but it's also used in a more general sense. If we perceive the athlete moving in an environment and the environment is their equipment, so to say, and the task of the athlete is to adapt to it so that he makes or she makes their environment as ergonomical as possible. And the idea, the concept of prehension is very relevant here. That is how to prepare to receive forces or to throw things in the best way. The cause effect and modeling principle. Modeling, this refers to the coaches, to the practitioners' idea about how things go, about causes, about what effects are caused by which causes. He should have heuristics he or she should have heuristics. Practitioners should have models, correct models inside their heads. So when they see something, they should identify its cause, and therefore their response, their intervention should be safe and sane on the same time. And that's some general things. And summing up about the biomechanics, I will see you in the next chapter. Thank you.